Hello everyone, my name is Luisa and this is the Lulu Blue Studio. Today I'm gonna guide you step by step into the process of painting this floral bouquet with the pastel colors. We are going to learn how to paint the flowers and how to let them pop from the white page. Let's start. As a first thing, I start to paint the flowers in the center of the page and I use my new filbert brush. This is a filbert brush from the brand Pro Arte that I really love, and I start by using a little bit of gray paint. This is Davis gray, and I start to create the first flower by using the belly and the side of this filbert brush. I also add a little bit of red, this is scarlet red, and I really just create the simplest flower by leaving the white center. We're going to add in a second moment the yellow center, and I'm going to create just these simple petals, 4 big petals that enhance this flower. So if you are a beginner and you're looking to understand how to create, for example, simple flowers like this one, I recommend you to take a filbert brush or a round brush and create simple petals of the size you prefer. Keep the white center that you are going to fill in a second moment, and just use the colors that you have in your color palette with a light color value in first place. You can take advantage of the wet in wet technique and you can allow different colors, as I did with the gray and the red, to blend together, and you will quickly start to have a very nice effect. For the second main flower of this composition, I start using a little bit of transparent orange and using in first place a very light color value of this color. I use the belly and the side of this filbert brush to start to create the main petals. This flower is turned toward the upper right corner of the page, and therefore I'm first creating the petals, the outer petals that connect this flower to the main one, and with a lighter value of this color I'm creating the petals, the upper petals that I see in the back of this flower. While the orange is still wet, I already allow some yellow to blend into the center part of this flower, because I want to give already a little bit of yellow touch in the center, but I will create a more defined center part of this second flower in a second moment. On the left side of the central flower, I started to create a similar flower as the one that I've created on the right side. And in order to have connection between these flowers, I still use some transparent orange. I play with the color values of transparent orange to create all the different petals of this third flower. If you want to have a better understanding of what color values are, I link another video that I created where I explain the technical parts of color values and how to use them in the best way to create petals and flowers that are more realistic, although still in a very loose style. So if you are a beginner and you're looking to understand how to create your flower compositions and create something similar to this one, I recommend you to start from 1 to 3, let's say, main flowers. You can set them in the center of the page and start to create very simple shapes of your petals. Usually you can create the first flower set in the center of the composition looking straight at the observer, and then, for example, the easiest way is to add 2 other flowers that are set on the page looking, for example, the 2 upper corners. And you can create these flowers using, for example, a filbert brush or a round brush. In my opinion, these are the 2 easiest brushes to use, especially if you're a beginner. And then you can start to add a little bit of, let's say, character to your flowers using the wet in wet technique. I think this technique is one of the simplest that you can take advantage of in watercolor to start to give to your flowers a little bit of movement and to give some details, although the compositions are going to still be in loose style. And when your main flowers are going to be ready, you can start to create the leaves. To create the leaves, you can either use the filbert brush or you can use a round brush depending on the shapes of the leaves that you want to give. In this example, for example, I started creating the leaves using this filbert brush. And what I am doing is basically taking a little bit of green from my color palette, usually a mixture of sap green and green earth in first place, and I just touch the paper with the side and the belly of this brush. Thanks to the shape of this brush, just by touching the paper with a little bit of pressure will give the impression that on the paper we are exactly placing some leaves. So in first place, if you're a beginner, I would recommend you to create this sort of leaves with a very light color value of green. Pick one green and just don't use it too concentrated, and just place around all of these flowers you have created your leaves. As soon as you have created, for example, this first layer of leaves, start to mix other greens that you have on your color palette and start to create also darker color values of your greens to create leaves that are emerging from the first layer. So if you are a beginner, my recommendation for you is, after you have created the main flowers of your compositions, start to create these leaves. And the leaves can be created through different layers, starting from lighter values of greens and adding leaves in a way that the leaves are sort of framing your flowers and reaching different and darker color values of greens. If you don't have many greens available on your color palette, remember that you can mix, for example, the greens with the blues to obtain darker greens, or for example, you can also mix the green with the red to obtain a green that is less bright and more dull. So remember that you can mix what you have available to obtain different color hues, and also changing the amount of pigment on your brush, so dipping into the water your brush, you will obtain different color values. Start from the lighter color values and then keep adding darker brush strokes of darker color values to give to your whole composition more movement and character. At this point, I'm adding the center to the flowers, and I'm using a mixture mainly of yellow. This is lemon yellow with a little bit of yellow ochre and burnt umber. For the peonies, I'm creating the center first with the first layer of yellow lemon and yellow ochre, and then I add a few brush strokes and dots of Mars black and burnt umber. For the main flower in the center, this is a general flower, I created already through the wet on wet technique some blends between the yellow and the gray and red, and I already like because it gives already some impression that the center is in bright yellow. And I'm adding the center part of the main flower in brown color mixed with burnt umber. This is a quite simple flower composition, but I hope this tutorial is giving you the details that you need to understand how to adapt these tips to your flower composition and to progress, improve your techniques and watercolor skills. Another tip that I want to give you at this point is to remember to add contrasting brush strokes to your flower compositions in order to give to the flowers the possibility to pop, for example, from the bed of leaves you have created, but also from the page overall. You can add contrasting brush strokes as I am doing on the leaves, and this is one of the simplest ways. And I usually like to mix some darker greens I have on my color palette, for example, with some blues. In this case, for example, I'm mixing some cobalt green dark with some Prussian blue. You can also mix your greens, for example, with the reds that you have on your color palette, and this mixture will be a little bit more dull and less vibrant. In this composition, I didn't like the idea of having some dull green leaves, therefore I just mixed the greens that I have available with some blues, but I just want you to know that you can create some duller brush strokes, for example, in this way. The other way you can enhance your flowers is to create additional brush strokes through the wet on dry technique, as I am doing now with the leaves, on your petals. This means that once all of your petals are completely dry, you can add additional brush strokes on top of your petals to enhance the shape of your petals and, for example, if there are some shades. You can use different brushes to create leaves, and usually, depending on the sort of composition that I have or that I wanted to create, I sometimes use a bigger brush, a round brush in size 12, and then I add contrasting brush strokes with a smaller brush, round brush in size 6. Sometimes I also like to use a mop brush to create the leaves, because I really think the mop brush gives me the chance to obtain some brush strokes that I'm not able to obtain with a round brush. And so at this point I am still using the round brush in size 6 to add a little bit more definition and some shades through a layer of paint on the flowers I've created. I do this through the wet on dry technique because all the petals are completely dry, and I like to use this moment to experiment and to use a very light value of paint. So when the whole painting is going to be completely dry, this second layer is going to be visible but subtle. When the floral composition is almost completed, I look back and I decide where to add, for example, additional brush strokes, contrasting brush strokes to enhance, for example, some parts compared to others. And I try to add these details, but not to add too many details, because otherwise I would obtain a style that is not too loose and not a style that I really like. So it is up to you to decide how many details to add or to leave the floral composition as you have created. I hope this tutorial was interesting for you, and especially if you are a beginner, I hope you have learned something from it. Let me know in the comments below if there is something in particular you would like me to explain in a next tutorial. Thank you for watching this video. See you next time!